Right, good morning everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for part 2 of our discussion. Just a little bit of housekeeping first. This room goes from being as hot as the Sahara Desert to as cold as the Siberian steppes. So what we're going to do at the right time, we will use the air conditioning very discreetly. By that I mean we will open the windows when it gets too hot and we will close them when it gets too cold. So if I could just ask all our speakers, apparently you do need to speak quite close to the microphone. When you get very excited and move away from the microphone, no one can hear you, I'm told. Does this sound about the right level to you in the audience? Or is it too loud? Is okay? You can hear me? Okay, great. And then for our speakers, when you want to show your slide presentation, you just need to let the gentleman know at the back that you would like yours to be loaded. That would be great. On that basis, we're now about to start. My name is Andrew Main-Wilson, and I am Chief Executive of AMBA, the Association of MBAs, one of the big international accreditation organizations, but also a membership organization for students and graduates with an MBA from the 253 AMBA schools we accredit. I'm also currently the chairman of United Nations Prime, and we have one of our previous United Nations Prime chairmen here, Danica Purg, as well. So the topic that we have is, should business schools change their approach to training business leaders to meet the business community's expectations? And following the session this morning that covered other topics, we've kind of agreed that we're going to focus on what needs to be changed in teaching and how for this session. And we have a very preeminent panel of expert deans and business leaders. I'm just going to show 1 or 2 slides in context first on this issue. There's only 3 or 4 slides. Okay, the first is we researched over 2,000 of your students and other business schools worldwide and asked them what their overall satisfaction level was with 2 elements of your business schools. The first, the curriculum, and the second, the quality of faculty teaching. And the good news is the satisfaction levels overall are very high for AMBA schools, and most of you are from AMBA schools. So that is good news. MBA students are very demanding and critical people, and these are high levels. However, when we asked for the 2 levels, the 2 questions of greatest dissatisfaction with their business school experience, they relate very much to our topic today. The first is big data. What do you as a student or graduate believe is most demanded as a new skill when you get a job? And 90% of your students and graduates say big data. Employers want to see knowledge of big data when they recruit you. Yet only 27% of students and graduates feel it is being properly taught. So there's a 63% skills gap. And the second area of biggest dissatisfaction with business schools is digital marketing. The figures were 85% of employers want to see you've been taught these skills, but only 40% of students feel it's being well enough taught. So very much a focus for today. When I was educated at the Harvard Business School, they told me that, like most business leaders, your biggest weakness is IT, but you only need to get your IT knowledge to an acceptable level where you can understand it. That was quite a few years ago, and that is clearly not true now. These skills are needed. But alone, to Danica's point earlier, these great digital skills are almost useless on their own. As an employer, I took on a high-flying digital expert from a major telecoms multinational who spent all of his time on his PC and couldn't communicate with people. There were no people skills. And we recruited a head of digital marketing who didn't have the commercial acumen. She thought her job was to get as many click-throughs from our emails as possible. And I had to explain that I'm not interested in click-throughs. I'm only interested in the number of students, graduates, and business schools we recruit. So the commercial acumen was missing. So maybe the question for today is, there is more to be taught in this new age than ever before. But when I ask many of you in Russia what the biggest issue facing Russian business schools is, you're almost all saying people are demanding shorter, faster, cheaper programs. And yet in a competitive world where there is more to be learned than ever before, and your students and graduates are competing with other students and graduates around the world, is it a mismatch of expectation that people should expect even shorter programs when there is more to learn? I came back from Columbia Business School in the USA 2 months ago, and they've just recruited 1,000 MBAs in this year's cohort, full-time for 2 years. So think what they're going to learn and compete with internationally. And I've also recently come back from our school, IIM Kozhikode in India, and their 26-month part-time MBA hasn't given their students a single day off in just over 2 years. So that's how hard the competitors are working globally. So how do we go forward in this digital transformation, but also teach the interpersonal skills and the commercial skills at the same time? So I'm now going to introduce each of our panelists, just really with their name and their school, and let them introduce their background in more detail and also their presentation. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Paul Matthyssens, who is the Dean of Antwerp Business School in Belgium. Paul, over to you.
Thank you. I'm a strategic management. I'm sorry. Normally, I don't use a microphone because people get a headache when I speak because my voice is very loud. So I'm a dean of a relatively small but very international business school on most rankings and also accreditations. It's so that I'm a strategic management professor, just as a background. Do I immediately start now? Timothy?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So I kick off then with a subject. So first of all, I think in MBA programs, in higher education in general, what we should do is bring more and more adaptability as a skill to students, yeah? And because of all the change that is accumulating, I think adaptability is a key word, and that implies in any case that students should do lifelong learning, L to the third. I think it's really important because adaptability means that you remain open to learn new things, and I think that leads to a new concept that we should offer. Perhaps an MBA should be shorter, like you say, perhaps not 2 years, but just 1 year, but with a ticket, you know, like for the bus or the metros in a city. So that you can, as a student, go to updating classes, updating sessions, because in a few years you probably are fully out. But secondly, we should also offer more on-the-job learning, probably, yeah? I would call it facilitated action learning, where people are doing things, are working with their software, are doing their business transformations, and where you coach them, where you bring cohorts together virtually probably, and sometimes also on campus, for very useful interactions, where you offer as a business school tools, concepts, and so on that they can apply to their job and on-the-job learning during their career. So you could call it also a little bit holistic learning. And I will not abuse my introduction time here. I will keep it relatively short. Perhaps we will discuss later anyway, right? If that's possible. I also think that we are not educating CDOs, Chief Digital Officers or Chief Technology Officers per se. I think any manager, any leader should have a technological component, should be high-tech, but at the same time also high-touch. And I think it's not just about skills, about systems, about IT architecture, about big data or marketing analytics or whatever. I think also they should be masters in transforming organizations, organizational design, and be change agents. And that means a lot of skills such as ambidexterity, translation skills, what is happening in another industry, how do I translate that to my industry, translation skills, interpretation skills, I would say, framing, that kind of things. And I think for that you have to go to a business school. You probably cannot do that by just watching a MOOC and then you become like that change agent. So perhaps for the hard part, the high-tech part, it can be replaced quite well by MOOCs, by online learning, and so on. I also think partly as action learning on the job and facilitated learning over your life, but you also have that high-touch part of being smart, being able how to translate and lead a transformation in your organization. And there I think the business schools have to spend more attention to that. So we just changed, for instance, in my business school, our slogan. We had just opening minds. Now we have opening minds, touching souls, energizing business. And we choose that touching souls part to say, right, okay, as a business leader in a transforming world, you have to be able to empower people to accept and embrace that change. And I think that's an important element of that touching soul part. And then energizing business, I think leaders should give in an energetic way the lead in business transformation. So it's these three elements, I think, that are key in higher education. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Paul. We will take any questions as we go along, and of course, any questions at the end. Would anyone like to make any comments or ask Paul any questions? No? Okay, thank you, Paul. We will move on to our next speaker. Delighted to introduce now Patrice Houdayer, who is the Vice Dean of SKEMA, which is a top school in Lille in northeastern France. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I think I will have a presentation, so if you can put it on the screen. Yeah, that's great. And if you can give me... Thanks, Matt. So, my name is Patrice Houdayer. I'm the Vice Dean of SKEMA Business School, which is in fact what we call now a global business school, where there is a few business schools, stuff like that. I will comment more on that. But in fact, we are, yes, I'm personally based in Lille, but the school has 6 campuses worldwide. And we have 3 campuses in France, 1 in China, 1 in the US, in which we are delivering US degrees, and also a new campus in Brazil, where we are also issuing Brazilian degrees. So it's a global business school. I will, you know, the real challenge is that I have a presentation which could be presented in 10 or 15 minutes. So I've been told that they should be less than 10 minutes. So to make a long story short, of course we are talking about digital transformation, digital leaders, and how to train these leaders. And my presentation will be also to question how schools are transforming themselves to train these future digital leaders. So as we all know nowadays, we don't know exactly how many schools we have worldwide, but it's between 13,000 to 15,000. So competition there is a huge competition. There is also more and more international competition. As you can see, years ago, which was great for the US, there was mainly in the Financial Times Global MBA ranking, 75%, more than that, US business school, which is not anymore the case now. As you can see, there is more and more Asian and European business school fighting against US business school, which is great for Europe, of course. What we also have is that we are also, as business school, in a stage of digital transformation. We are disrupted by newcomers, and this is our life today. So, if we look at what we could call Uberization, digitalization, what we are facing now, MOOCs was a key buzzword 4 years ago. I'm not sure this has completely disrupted our business schools, but it's something which is very interesting. E-learning, corporate training, we were talking about that earlier today, but also we can see now business schools that are delivering full masters online. University of Illinois is a quite interesting example. This business school has decided less than 2 years ago to deliver their MBA online, thanks to Coursera. This MBA cost 4 times less than their residential MBA, which tells also something about the disruption we are facing now. So, of course, it's a huge opportunities or challenges that we need to do. Andrew, you were talking about how our students are very happy about our business school. If I want to be, let's say, provocative, when we are reading some surveys, some of them are really frustrating or challenging for business schools. A survey done 1 year ago by McGraw-Hill among thousands of seniors college in the US. And as you can see, only 40% of them were saying that their experience was well preparing them for their career. So we need to ask this question to ourselves. How are we training this new generation and these future digital leaders? And it's even worse when you just focus on women. But it's quite clear, as I used to say to our young students, when they are arriving on campus, they are going to work for at least 50 years, at least. They are going to change every 2 years jobs, maybe country, maybe region of the world. So we need also, of course, to train them to this digital disruption, but also to train them to all different skills that companies and what they will be facing, because as it has been said before, these students will be working for companies or in industries that don't exist today, which is a huge challenge for them because we don't know for sure what will be the competencies they will need in 5-10 years' time. So we'll need to train them to learn during their own life. So there is a tons of different studies that are focusing on what should be the skills that the workforce will need to be in 2020, in 2030, in 2040, whatever. So I will not comment that, but you have, again, so many skills. And among them, from these different, I would say, studies, at SKEMA Business School, we have tried to reinvent our school. Because this was said just before. Of course, we can talk a lot, but we need also to change business schools to make sure that we will be able to train students as they will need to be in the future. So, to make a long story short, SKEMA Business School has the goal to prepare global talent for the knowledge economy. This is a huge challenge for us. So from that, what we have decided, 1 month ago, we have just implemented a complete reshaping of our departments within the school. We don't have anymore a marketing department. We don't have anymore a finance department. So as you can imagine, finance professors, they don't know anymore where they are. Because in fact, we have restructured the whole school in 3 main, what we call academies. One about digitalization, one about innovation, one about globalization. Because we think these 3 key academies will force our professors to work together. When we talk about globalization, it's not only about globalization of finance, it's globalization of a lot of different things that need to be worked together. And as you all know, it's sometimes quite difficult to make sure that professors will be working outside their original field. So SKEMA Business School, to make a long story short, 40,000 alumni worldwide, almost in 150 different countries, more than 1/3 of international students, which is also quite interesting that 1/3 of our students will have their first job outside their home country. So it tells also something about what a school should be. So then we have 6 campuses, as I said. If now I'm sharing with you a few examples, and I will be, of course, very quickly on that, and I will be able to answer questions later on. We are trying to implement, I would say, key skills, which are digitization, hybridation, which is multidisciplinary approaches, soft skills, innovation, creativity, multiculturalism. We want to make sure that students will have all these key skills to be well prepared for the future. So, first of all, we have decided to build the curriculum based on a full individualization. Student can choose every semester where she or he will be doing and where he or she will be. For example, a student will be able to start 1 semester in France, then next semester in China, because we are offering a way to do step-by-step this learning. Students will be able to have 1 semester in the business school, then 1 semester internship, 1 semester in one of our academic exchanges. So it's really a full individualization, which is, frankly speaking, a nightmare to manage. But it's a key for each student to prepare himself or herself for the future. We are developing, as you can see, global tracks. Students will have, at the end of our flagship program, is not an MBA, it's a Master in Management, well known. This program is a 3-year program. Students will have an experience in 3 key regions of the world after the 3 years. This is compulsory to be graduated. And of course, we are developing more and more double degrees, but double degrees for us, it's not anymore in law or other things, but it's also more and more in different disciplines. So management students can now get engineering degrees, and we are mixing students more and more. We are more than 50 specializations, so students can move from one campus to another. We are also doing more and more collaborative learning, which is for us a key approach to make sure that the new talents will be able to act using that in companies. To give you an example, we are delivering 1-week seminar on all 6 campuses during the same week. Students are connected from the 6 campuses and are using the different time zone to work in virtual teams. So they are using 24 hours a day to work on projects. And this is what we think will give them the right competencies to work in virtual teams when they will join companies, to make sure that they don't need to go in one location, but of course to do so, you need to have a full approach of multiculturalism, how to work with people from different cultures on different locations with which you are not interacting face to face. So We are also introducing more and more design thinking seminars. Again, this seminar is delivered on the 6 campuses, jointly with a design school on each campus. So we are mixing design students and management students. We are doing the same for an hackathon, where we are mixing engineering students and our management students. So this is also a way for us to make sure that students will, of course, management students will have all the digital knowledge. They are doing codings, but they are also learning from peers. Because we know, you all know that the new generation of students are not anymore able, I should say, to stay 3 hours in an amphitheater. They don't want that anymore. So we are changing the whole way we are approaching learning. We all have in business school innovation hubs, learning centers. But the key issue is how to transfer that to all lectures. And then we have at SKEMA, for example, moved this development and make it compulsory for almost each single lecture. So a 3 hours lecture now is not anymore a lecture, is maybe 30 minutes lecture, then work group, then connection with other campuses and feedbacks in the same 3 hours time. So we are doing a lot of things, and of course, students are also developing more and more action learning, active learning. Students are now entrepreneurs, not anymore spectators of their learning journey. So I could give you much more information on that, but I think I've already used all my time.
Thank you very much. Really impressive ideas there, Patrice. Do we have any questions from the audience at this stage? Irina. Could we have the microphone, please, at the front for Irina in the second row? Thank you.
Nikova, Regulatia. What challenges do you face while mixing students, say management students with engineering students, in terms of scheduling, maybe regulations?
When you talk about regulation, and especially in France, that's, yes, for sure, it's huge challenges. In fact, what we've done is we have selected usually 1 school per campus. If I'm talking about engineering, we are working with an engineering school in Paris, another one in Lille, one in China, in Suzhou, where we are. And we have decided to, as I was saying just before, to have 1 full week dedicated to that. So from an operational point of view, for all schools, it's much more easy to manage. You don't have to make sure that your time slot will be compatible. It's also for us a key to make sure that both students will learn from that. Because engineering students, if I'm using this example, don't know the real purpose of management or business. So the fact that they are interacting with each student is in fact for us a real leverage to make sure that these engineering students will be able to choose later on maybe more specialization in management. To give you an example, we are doing for this 3-year program, the hackathon is during the first year, which is for all students the same level. During the last year, the 3rd year of engineering school and management school, students can have a specialization in the partner school. So in fact, we are, at the beginning, it's very difficult to make sure that they will be working together. But it's also, on another side, very difficult to make sure that we have 120 nationalities, different nationalities on campus. It's also very difficult to make students work together with different backgrounds and cultures. So in fact, we are approaching that as a different culture, an engineering culture, a management culture. And we're using the same kind of tools sometimes to make sure that we will break the ice at the beginning of the seminar. And we have also different teams from the engineering school, but also from the management school that will be involved, professors, I mean, but also representatives from companies, because we know that after 10, 20 years, you can share your own knowledge with students. We are at the beginning very specialized, and then they understand from companies that it's not anymore the case after 5, 10, 15 years. So yes, we are mixing these kind of things, but to make it clear, it's a huge challenge. We are doing this kind of seminar every 6 weeks with different purpose each time, and each time it's almost a nightmare to manage.
Any more questions before we move on? All right, very good. Thank you once again very much indeed. Our next two speakers will now give us, from a very senior management perspective, the business view, the corporate view of what needs to happen. And firstly, I'd like to welcome Mikhail Andronov, the president of Rusenergosbyt, one of the largest energy companies in the Russian Federation. Over to you.
Thank you. Could you please load my presentation, please? Thank you very much for invitation. It's very important for us because our industry previously was very closed type industry, very traditional. Now has a revolution. That's why we need a new specialist, new graduates from business school, and quite frankly, in one phrase, we don't need a routine engineers and managers. We need a revolutionary. That's why I'm here. Thank you. First of all, let's begin from first slide. It's very simple. American journalists told that we believe that electricity exists because we have to pay money for it, and that's it. And it was true 15 years ago. But in 10 years, everybody could say, I do believe that electricity exists because I am selling electricity daily and I get some money from it. Yeah. What is going on now? First of all, now in Russia, we are selling electricity, and we are selling approximately 10% of Russian electricity. And we are working in our community just 300 of participants. It's 76 power plants, generators, transportation system grids, and approximately 200 sales company and customers. And customers should do just one thing: get the bill and pay it. That's it. But in the future, and we could see now that a lot of efforts, money, and investments are coming to the energy industry. For example, for investment fund and energy company had invested more than $400 per each person on the earth. It's substantial money. And definitely it makes a revolution. It means that in 10 years, maybe not each, but most of you will sell electricity and buy daily. It means that most of our residential will have windmills or solar panels, batteries. You will collect energy in the night. You will sell it at midday because plants should work and should consume. Price will go up, and you will do it daily. And definitely, in order to do it, you will have to change all system, because now it's 300 participants. In 10 years, it will be 20 million. And all procedures, all rules, and all ways how to manage it will be that we have to invent a new one. That's why I'm here. First of all, I would like to confirm the previous speaker that we need 4 points. First of all, distributed energy. Even 10 years ago, in order to be cost effective, you have to build up huge power plant. Now, technology is going forward, and solar panel, windmills become cost efficient, become very flexible, and price is going down dramatically. And it means that we need specialists which could be sophisticated in distributed energy. The second is big data. In order to manage and to predict behavior of 10 million of participants on market, We have to analyze, we have to predict, and definitely without big data specialists, we couldn't do it. Horizontal management. Definitely, we could see previous picture. Now, all structure of energy industry very vertical oriented, from top to the bottom. Generators, grid, sales, customers. In the future, it will be a real nightmare because everyone would like to sell and buy electricity from to another. That's why we need specialists of horizontal management. Previous speakers mentioned Uber. Definitely, next billionaire in energy industry will be person who will invent Uber for energy industry, because each of residential would like to sell electricity, but somebody will collect it and resell to customers. And modern specialists. I will speak about what kind of specialists we need in the next slide. Yeah, okay. Who will make it work? First of all, definitely we need IT-skilled think tanks. We don't mean that we will do all IT work by ourselves. No, we have on our left side Dell, and definitely we will ask world leader IT company to help us. But in order to make professional task, we should understand what we want to get, how could we arrange it. That's why definitely we need a specialist who could speak with, for example, Dell on the same languages. We need IT-skilled think tanks. Definitely, as soon as 1 million of clients will be open to sell it through IT system, all nightmare which is we could see on Hollywood movies could come true. That's why definitely we need very hard safety system to secure all our clients, because definitely for millions of clients it's impossible to do direct managing, switching off and switching on. It means that definitely we need very sophisticated IT system and safety barrier also. Legal expert. It's very funny, but normal MBA means that MBA graduate knows the law, knows the rules, but it's not enough now. Because, for example, Russian government is open for new idea from businessmen. They are ready to invent new law, which will be transparent, competitive, and give all energy company to work in new era of energy freely. But they don't ask us, okay, is it this law good or bad? They ask, please, give us conception, give us idea what kind of law you need, please come. And quite frankly, we need such kind of specialists. I could say it's law inventors, not only like a legal lawyer, but person who could understand how does it work, how could we prepare a new law, because now everybody is ready. We want to set up a new generation of energy, but it should be regulated by legal framework, and we have a substantial lack of specialists who could suggest. And multitask specialist, it's obvious. Okay. Colleagues which invited me to participate in this meeting asked me, okay, please tell your personal background, what kind of knowledge from high school is useful for you and useless. It's very simple, just few words. Foreign languages, definitely it makes sense, because now all business is international, and our company also half Russian, half Italian. Second, finance, definitely, it's not changed rapidly. Law, I already told, and very important knowledge, it's skills, how to learn quick and effective, as told our previous speakers. I would like to make one question to our colleagues. Could you raise up person who use his graduate in his day-by-day work? It means, for example, if you graduate philosophy, you are a philosopher. If you're an engineer, graduate, please raise up. Who is working on your specialty, please? It's obvious, yeah. Not so much hands, yeah. It means that definitely we have to change our specialty each 5 years and our profession each 10 years at least. It means that our reputable business school should prepare us to learn all our life and to be ready for changes. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions at this stage? Yeah, gentleman in the third row there.
Sorry, to ask you in Russian.
Energy has a culture of investing in education and in training. It has come about as a tradition. I come from the Urals University. We have lots of projects in energy. They invest in schools, then at the university level, then at the later stages of education. In other industries, it doesn't work so. So what's the reason why this culture has formed in energy? Somehow it doesn't get replicated in other industry. Why do you think such approaches have established themselves in energy? Because I think because nobody has managed to destroy energy. So now we have a new era. A lot of investment is coming into the industry, and I think it's a great credit of the industry that it's been able to keep the tradition. Perhaps one of the reasons is that people are scared of letting unqualified people to run nuclear power plants. Maybe this is the reason. I will also ask my question in Russian. Prozorov, Ulyanov, Oblast. My question is about wind energy that's going to be developed in Russia. Do you need special management skills for that? Thank you. It's a very good question. I know in Ulyanovsk Oblast, there's also a test bed where wind mills are being erected. I know you're helping us, and I know you're one of the regions that's helping develop wind energy in Russia. Yes, of course. You need to have specialists who understand where to build, because if you put a windmill where there's no wind, I guess you get broke. So, of course, we need people like that, and we take care of that. We had a colleague of yours talking at an energy conference in Yakutia. He said windmills are great, but it turns out that when it's minus 50 Celsius, they can't survive their temperature. They just break. So we have to understand that we have a huge country, not the best climate. So for wind energy, there'll always be room, and it'll always be in demand. And of course, we'll need specialists to do that. Thank you. My question is, are you working out some scenarios to monetize electric power energy using cryptocurrencies, including maybe some generation facilities for residential users, so they could generate power and get payment in cryptocurrency? Do you have any such scenarios being studied? You know, it's actually quite a standard question that we get. People come to us and ask, do you believe in cryptocurrencies? I can say that I believe that power is being spent when you're mining, and we like it. It's a clear fact that I like very much. But whether cryptocurrencies are needed or blockchain technologies are needed, then yes, we think that it's exactly based on blockchain technology. I'm not talking about cryptocurrency, but on distributed databases, that a distributed system will be built that will be able to take care of tens of millions of participants in this distributed energy system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to a good friend and a great supporter of the Gaidar Forum over the past few years, Boris Shcherbakov, who is the Vice President and General Director of Dell EMC for Russia, Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm a little bit confused. The audience is mostly Russian, isn't it? So why we are sticking to English? And I would probably test it from my perspective. I will try to use the import substitution policy and start talking Russian, if you guys don't disagree with me. Is that right? Okay, thank you very much. So my colleagues on the board, on the panel, will have to put their earphones on. That's fine with you? Danica, you understand it anyway.
Но я понимаю.
Да, конечно. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Before I start my presentation, I'll say a few words about what's happening, what's being discussed. You see, business education is business, isn't it? Of course. And all of you are working in universities and business schools. You're all in your own part of your own business. You're professionals in this business. You're discussing challenges and problems related to the development of this business. They said you are not forgetting that your main customers are two groups of consumers. The first ones are private individuals, people who want to get this business education following their own motivations. And the second part are companies or social institutions, organizations. They are also business. So we're here following the B2B model. So it's the business who uses people, and that wants to see some skills and competencies from their employees. So
Marry those two. Я переключусь на английский. Не знаю,
switch back into English.
вот как женить вот эти
I just know how to say it in Russian, how to marry these two trends, how to join the illusions that an individual comes with, because he has the illusion, he has expectations. What do you need to build a career? I need an MBA. He doesn't know what MBA is going to offer them, what technology capabilities he's going to acquire. But he expects that it will give him an opportunity to grow and to find a better path in the career. But on the other hand, businesses don't really need people with illusions. They need specific specialists who have to understand how to work in the new digital economy, how to build their relationships with the technologies that are arriving every day, all those new blockchains and cryptocurrencies. By the way, Dell yesterday or the day before yesterday stopped sales against bitcoins because there's no demand. It's just an offside. It's not yet a market. It's just a nascent phenomenon. We're at the very early stage of this process. So what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years, looking forward, we can only guess. So this is the first thing. It's a complicated process of interacting between individuals and companies. It's a big problem for business schools, how to find the right trade-off. I've been collaborating with lots of, Dell has been collaborating with a huge number of institutions all over the world. We have 140,000 people working for the company in 180 countries of the world. So by definition, we definitely use this talent pipeline that business schools are churning out. But we are not so much oriented on management business schools. We're more focused on university education. But again, the largest business schools, we're in touch with them. In Comps in Austin and Harvard. We have contacts in every major business school. We're trying to find the right positioning for ourselves in those schools. And we, of course, keep helping them to develop. Second, looking for ways of transformation. It's an obvious trend. It hasn't stopped for all the time that I've been following the business education arena. And of course, you as a business should adopt all the new technology. I'm not an expert in business education. I'm just a user of the product that it produces. And I'll mention it later, what's important for me as a user. Whereas the search for transformation paths is quite a natural thing. The only thing is that you shouldn't do a lot of lip work to the effect that it's going to offer a new future. It's just a natural transformation. And now that we're saying that we're in the next phase of the Industrial Revolution, what I'm saying has applied since the very first stage. That's why I like Adam Smith so much. We're still there. Nothing new has come. It's just new technologies arrive. There used to be iPhone, now it's there. Uber didn't exist, now it is. I like it. So what needs to happen is that I need to understand as a customer, as a client, what I need. Because without understanding what I need, business schools won't be able to do anything good for me. They will be producing traditional products, using traditional approaches, but they will not move business education forward. Is it difficult? Of course it's difficult. Cross-cultural things has been mentioned earlier. An important element that for some reason is quite often forgotten by a lot of people, especially American business schools. They believe that the world is just limited by two oceans on both sides. It's not so. Any multinational company has about 50% of business in Americas, but the remaining 50% in other countries in Asia Pacific, in EMEA, and in other exotic countries, including Russia. So here, the requirements for education are somewhat different. We've already been hearing that people demand short, more intensive, in-depth courses. Of course, they will be using all the technologies, innovation, including e-learning and some distributed networking capabilities. But nevertheless, the requirements of a Russian customer, Russian people, are different from those of people attending French or German or American business schools. Some classic examples of failures of business strategy. If you remember such a well-known story that eBay did not manage to enter China. In 2003, 2004, they spent $1 billion, but then closed down the shop because, well, frankly, all the major companies acquire managers from their own segment. And if not from their own segment, but maybe from some similar segment. May Whitman was CEO at eBay at that time. And then somebody, perhaps an alumnus of an MBA school, got an idea that simple business unification is possible worldwide, is easy to do. So you just take all the server group and move it to America. And decision-making process started to take 15 days instead of one, and that played a negative role, of course. So a cultural conflict came about, a management team conflict between the Chinese team and the US team, and so eBay failed. That's a typical example of how cross-cultural mismanagement can be used to destroy a huge multinational business. It's easily done if you forget about cross-cultural compatibility. The most important thing for me is to launch the self-education process. I always say nobody can teach you anything. That works. You can only learn it yourself. And business schools and ourselves as employers can only be facilitators. If you haven't launched the self-education process, perhaps you won't get waste the output. Every person has to go for continuous lifelong learning. But it should be learning rather than teaching in the traditional classroom sense of the word. So I bought some classes, paid like $70,000, and then I can't understand why they didn't give anything to me, because you didn't want to work. So launching the self-learning capability, I think it's the most important task for any business school or any institution that works in the education areas. And the last thing, and then I switch to my presentation. It's about an imperative that you have to put into people's heads. It has already been mentioned in one form or another by the previous speakers. Let me go through it. It's like an English language slide. I didn't devise it myself. It's a slide that I kind of stole from somebody or borrowed from the previous speakers in similar fora. So what we have here is a list of several vectors to extend business education, including functional skills that the previous speakers have mentioned, human interaction, stakeholder awareness, whatever it means here, but nevertheless it's important. And also the development of the right hemisphere, brain hemisphere. But ethics here are somewhere in the center, between the commas. I would rather place a focus on that. What should be an imperative for any entrant to a business school, and why it's so important at this day and age? At this new information age, it's very important what you're doing, what products you are doing, or what cars you're building, how fast they're running. It's all very important. And what kind of cryptocurrency is going to become current in the next decades. It's all important. But it's much more important how you're doing that, which principles you are using for that. So how successful you are to blend it in with a humane look or perspective of the world and creating the new quality of life in the world. Well, we want to live in this world that you're creating. It quite often happens that the business doesn't want to think about the future of the world, about the future of the society where it's living. It just so happens. So I'm focusing on ethics. And again, it's not my phrase, it's Wen Jiabao. It was the Chinese premier. He also read Adam Smith, and he got it well into his memory that there are two forces acting in the market. And what we are teaching people, for the most part, is about the market forces, market procedures, financial control, big data, and everything to do with that. It's all useful. It's all needed. But quite often, people don't pay attention to the second line here, the questions of morals, which I think is wrong.
Why? Well, back to Adam Smith. So sometimes virtues are forgotten by the people who do business. So people are more after money than happiness. And Karl Marx used to talk about that. You could give them 300% revenues, and the businessman would be ready to commit any crime possible. So we used to study that back at school here in the Soviet Union. And Adam Smith, the theory of moral sentiment. So that theory was published 6 years before he published his main book. Which is on the reasons of the wealth inquiry. Into the nature and wealth, into the nature of wealth, of causes of wealth of nations. So there's a 16-year gap between those two books, and this, his first book was reprinted only 6 times during his lifetime, and the Inquiry, his next book, was reprinted only 4 times. And so Adam Smith focused a lot on the hands of morality. Well, if you don't have morality, you get Volkswagen and the Dieselgate. You all remember the fines, sanctions, ruined lives and careers and resignations, only because someone crossed the line and said, okay, let's readjust the sensor, the emission sensor. The most important thing for the car is to run. It's important why it runs, it's important how it runs, but the means, the way they did it was still important. So I think we need to incorporate this imperative, moral imperative, into our MBA program. We need to adopt zero tolerance on unethical behavior. There is a red line for anyone. So you can only achieve your gain by satisfying someone else's needs. And I want my needs to be satisfied. But very often I see that people cannot communicate on a peer-to-peer level. They don't take moral principles seriously. They cross red lines, and I do see that. And I fire those people, unfortunately. But they're all born by this education system. They also had MBA degrees. Well, Dell AMC, that's the name of the joint company. And that resonates well with what I think is appropriate. So there's a series of red lines that you cannot cross, and Dell has a rigorous ethical system. So the moral compass lies at the core of the company, and that perhaps accounts for its success. And as Adam Smith said, vanity is one of the main drivers of business people. Well, people are always after, scoring a point. People want to put their best foot forward. They want to be better than others. They want to perform better than others. And definitely when you get new knowledge and skills, you can do that. So there are so-called passions, human passions, and many of them are good and appropriate, but are they appropriate in business? Well, it's up for each of one to reply. So some of us still have that moral compass, while others have diverged from it. So what I would like to see in those who've received an MBA degree, they need to be positive, forward-leaning. They need to have open minds. They need to have agile minds and ability to learn. They need to be, have a high level of confidence. Not overly confident. Well, I don't think you can have zero ego. No, each of us have our own ego. You can't do without it. But it has to be sort of it should be level playing field, so that when you adopt an inclusive approach and take into account other people's interests. So here you have a list of the qualities that are necessary for a leader. Dell employs the so-called zero-tolerance attitude towards unethical behavior. So, we all remember the Soviet times when communism also put ethical rules at the core. So that's how we do business. And integrity, that's something that cements everything. That's our foundation. You cannot translate integrity into the Russian language. I tried to do it multiple times. You can have several words that describe it, and you have some of the English words. That's ethical, honesty, but you cannot really find an equivalent to the word integrity in the Russian language, one word equivalent. But it has to be your imperative for any MBA graduate. So far, I don't see this focus in many of the MBA programs that I've participated in or that I've seen. So I've been an advisory council member of the ACSB. I've been talking a lot about it. I've been telling those guys, you have to focus on it. It has to be a separate discipline. It has to be an absolute imperative for your graduates. You have to start it from day one to the last day. Well, thank you.
Any questions, Boris? Fourth row on the left, thank you.
Thank you for your insightful presentation. In late October, one of the vice presidents of Microsoft, talking in front of an investment company, said that in 5 years, you have a complete shift and reshuffle of all the senior managers in major corporations and in medium-sized companies. So Microsoft has launched a radical transformation of its strategy. Are we to expect a similar transformation at Dell? Will computer producers be exposed to the digitalization, to disruptive technologies, cloud computing? Will you be exposed to the same trends? Do you think that in 5 years' time, Dell might get new leaders, just as well as medium-sized companies? So maybe you need to start to read Schumpeter and not just Adam Smith. Well, you need to read a lot, and you need to continue reading. Again, that's a lifelong process. That's what I talked about. Now, when I do interviews, I always ask, what was the latest book you read? And when a person says, well, I don't read books, I wouldn't, hire that person. You need to read Schumpeter, you need to read Nietzsche, whoever. But you need to take everything with a pinch of salt. They might read wise books, but sometimes you don't know why. What's the point? Nassim Taleb, you might remember, Andrei, you might remember, Nassim Taleb spoke at the school, and someone asked, well, when you have a black swan, when we don't know how the cause and solutions to it, why do you write, big books about black swans if we don't know what's the cause of the black swan? But even you might find solutions even in those big books. So, I still insist that we need to read those books. Okay, let's go back to Dell. Well, Dell is an innovative company by nature. It's at the cutting edge of progress. And it is a disruptive company in itself. It creates cutting edge solutions. So data centers and data processing centers, data banks, that's at the core of our business. We bought a company called EMC 2 years ago. It was a major acquisition, well, actually takeover. We call it a merger. $76 billion. $76 billion. Will we have any changes at the Dell management? Well, you have to ask Michael Dell. He's the main owner. You just have one major second shareholder, and that's a foundation. So he's not bound by the interests of many other shareholders. So don't know what he might do. It's hard for me to comment on what Microsoft said. But anyway, we need to keep the foundation that we have. We need to build on it. We will hire less and less people who ignore ethics or morality. We don't need those people. Otherwise, we'll have fines. Otherwise, we'll have people getting jailed. You know, everyone would understand that you cannot use any means to achieve your gains. You should not cross red lines. That's the rule.
Хорошо.
Борис, во-первых, большое спасибо за тему этики.
Well, thank you for raising the issue of ethics. I'm sure you have your internal training center at Dell. But what kind of impact, what kind of support would you expect internally if it's an external provider? What would be interesting for you in terms of support from an external provider? Well, what kind of innovative solutions would you like to add to your internal process, training process? Well, we hire 1,000 students every year. Now, I'm talking about ethics and innovations, you know. Alignment, better alignment, better use of that moral principles. People should not have an illusion that by breaking ethical rules they will be successful. They shouldn't be under a false impression, under no circumstances.
Okay, we better make this one the last question. I'm sure that we could perhaps take some more when everyone's finished.
У меня такой вопрос.
Well, I have a story. One of the entrepreneurs asked us for a training, and he called it a sermon, like a preacher talking to people in a sermon. He wanted the coach to talk to his staff about values and virtues. And here's my question to you. Do you have any kind of new format of a conversation on virtues and values? Well, again, it's a simple genre, a simple format. We need to move to a situation when we are on the same wavelength. You need to be on the same wavelength to see eye to eye with each person so that you don't look like a preacher. We don't want to be preachers with a parish, you know. We need just to be on the same wavelength. We don't want to get into religion. Otherwise, if we're not on the same wavelength, we just part our ways with that person. That's very simple, as simple as that.
And thank you very much indeed for that. I would say the whole issue of integrity and responsible management is the subject of the next session in here at 3:30. Same room in an hour's time after this one finishes, so please don't miss that. Now, delighted to move on to another long-term and loyal supporter of the Gaidar Forum, Danica Purg, the president of both CEEMAN and her beautiful business school, IEDC Business School in Slovenia, on the banks of Lake Bled. Danica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that I really enjoyed your presentation. And like Andrew already mentioned the word responsible, I would use the word responsible leadership if you can't find a right word for integrity in your language, because we have the same problem in my language, and I'm using responsible leadership. And of course, you mentioned a lot about ethics. I think that you should also talk a little bit about sustainability and sustainable development, because this is as much, it's connected, of course, but it's as much important as ethics. And as you said, we shall talk later about that, and it's really very, very important. And we have a great person here with us who is leading this worldwide, Andrew and Jonas. So if the other remark I would like to use this time that I make another remark, and that is a language remark. You know, talking about ethics, developing intuition in leaders and all that, this main 10 competencies that came out of our research that I mentioned before. We made research in 11 countries, among them also in Russia. They were all coming from Eastern Central Europe and one from South Africa. We compared, and it's very similar. You know, we made it in, interviewed hundreds of people in the companies. And you know, if you look at this as complex problem solving as one of the competencies that management schools should provide, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordination with others, coordinating, not fighting, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. But of course, first of all, to think strategically and in a visionary manner. If you think about that, I repeated it, although we heard it today, sometimes similar things, then you don't use the word training anymore, my friends. There are quite some friends here, and I'm very happy to see you all. You know, it is leadership development, it is management development, it is education, it is a noble profession that we are having to bring up good people for better society, better leaders for better world, and not training, because you are training dogs and you know, and cats you can't train too much, but dogs and apes, etc. So let us not use the word training, but let us use the word development. If I succeed to convince you about that, then it was worthwhile to come to Moscow and to be here. That's one thing. Secondly, you know, it is talking about this, the forum, I shall not repeat all that, because in fact I can sign everything what I heard here in this panel now. But I shall give you a little bit some examples what we are doing in our school to develop inspiration, intuition, you know, all these skills and attitudes that a good leader should have. Because what we have to do is to, you know, on one side, this is I think this is my word, you know, high tech and high touch. I invented this. I said you need more high tech in order to have time for more high touch. You know, I'm author of this idea, so this is like 10, 15 years old, you know, more, as long as my school is. Because I was never good in high tech. We didn't have money. And here you are hearing only about big schools, like SKEMA, etc. You know, they have business schools all around the world. They can do the things what we cannot. But I can assure you that also a small management school can do all that on a different way, you know, and even more, because you are smaller, you have more the things under the control, you can be more in touch with people, and you have more possibility for high touch to your own people and to teach people to do it. So what are we doing? And to developing senses. You know, that's very important. You have to bring up the leaders who are inspired. How do you inspire them? People use this phrase, but they don't do that, you know. In fact, they don't do that. And you are not inspire them by coming there and having a nice speech or something like that. But you are letting them, you know, you bring some other people in like artists. And the artists are inspiring you. And you know what is my biggest surprise? That in the country, Russia, where you have the best theaters, you know, you are very strong in art, and you have always been. You don't use this enough in your management education. You are very strong in technology, one of the best in the world, but you don't have management of technology, or not at least something so good that all the world would run here to Russia to learn it. So I would suggest to pay more attention to them. And you know, if you invite an artist in then conducting, this is the most simple exercise, in fact, you know, because this is the exercise for team building, etc. But developing senses, developing listening skills, you know, listening to the music, you learn how to listen, how to put yourself in another shoe, how to develop observation skills. I'm sure that also at your medical schools, they are using, the high-level schools, they are using the art and artists, you know, in microsurgery, because there you need to be a very good observer, and you need to be in management a very good observer, so that you can predict and that you can forecast what will happen in the next 5 years or so and do it. Not to talk about ethics. And I know that Antonina Rostovskaya is doing this in your management, one of your management schools. So how do you call it? Come, help me. Help me to say what is the name of your school.
So, the practice of organic action.
Looking to this, thank you, listening a lot, you know, to them and seeing how she is bringing up these ethical issues among the students, etc. So, I shall cut the story a little bit shorter, and I wanted to say that we need to develop managers of the future with a lot of imagination, creativity, in order to make innovations. And if you look who are innovative, you know, guys, these are the startups, etc. We have to mix them together, work together with them. And you know, the richest Slovene, you know who is the richest Slovene? He just sold, it's a couple. She was also our student, not in MBA, but in another course for young managers. You know what they invented? And they sold last year their company for $1.5 billion, and still a lot they kept for themselves, but for $1.5 billion, they sold a company to Hangzhou, Chinese company, and it's called Talking Tom. For this toy, if you have children or grandchildren, you probably know it. It is an innovation that there is a little puppet, Talking Tom, whom you are making. Even I like to play with it. You know, you make like that, and Talking Tom is saying, "Don't touch me," or something like that. And with that, they were becoming rich. They had an imagination, not managerial skills, you know, but they were inventing. They were, you know, they were creative, etc. So, and a lot of things is, you know, we have the lightest plane in the world. We have the most beautiful yachts, you know, designer in the world, etc., etc. So it's everything on creativity and imagination. And I remember once I came to Latvia, but not to Rina school, to another school. And the guy apologized. He said, "I'm terribly sorry. Our school, half of the building is our school and half of the building is music school." And he said, "I'm apologizing. Sometimes we hear some voices from there." And I said to him, "How crazy you are. You have it there. You should use it. You should make something, you know, music and leadership, etc., because this is so, so important." And so work for creative mindset for your people, increase the communicative and empathetic capabilities, and of course, do your best that your students would serve the best, the local community, there it starts, and then of course also the global one. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you, Danica. Any questions at this stage for Danica? Yeah.
My name is Andrei. Could you give us an example of a synergy when artists and business school are combined? I don't know, painting or music. And what's your vision? So are there any clear case studies when it's worked?
13 full days of art and leadership in our MBA program. MBA program is lasting 101 days, full days from 8:30 till 5, 6 in the evening, and then still in the evening. And we have 13 days of art and leadership. We have a violinist coming to play and showing on decomposing the music and showing on pieces of the music, showing various conflict in music, how to recognize, you know, the noise, first phase of, you know, of the voice is the noise. And then how to have a noise, how better to not to have a noise but the voice, you know. It's very, very interesting. And then how to bring people to the harmony at the end, you know, through the music. So this is certainly a lesson how to become a better listener. Then we have a film director from Bosnia, Sarajevo, who is very active in Edinburgh Festival. And in February, I'm getting the former director of the Edinburgh Festival to lecture in our school. So Mills, the former one. So, you know, through the film, you can look the scenes out of the film and then creating discussion about that. Because, you know, you don't teach ethics like you have to behave ethical, etc. But you are letting people reflect. You are letting people think about. You are creating a dialogue about that, etc. How, like, on that way you are teaching ethics, for instance, you know. Then we have a conductor with the best choir. Last year they got the first prize in Riga on the European Song Festival, song context of the choirs. So this is a Gymnasia High School of Kran, and we are working with them. And so it's like that the conductor is conducting, showing a little bit in the beginning, but then participants are conducting. And then, you know, and then how do they conduct? Some they conduct like that, you know. So they are not getting attention, trying to get attention of people and attracting them and having the eye contact, etc. So then the girls in the choir, because it's a girls' choir, they are, and we work with some other choirs too, they are telling, because they have to give evaluation at the end. And you know, there were some examples. They say, firstly, you are listening how we are singing, and then only you start to conduct, which means that many leaders are firstly looking, you know, and only then they start to lead. So we are teaching people on metaphors, you know. Then we have a guy from UK who is world famous in storytelling. And from that you can, don't have time now to explain you, give you all examples. But we are also having artists, another, like a painter who is painting a painting with you together. And then you are discussing about that. And then we have a professor of management who is a business person, who he was one of the most famous, I should just give still this example. What is he doing is, he is trying through firstly he explains the art styles through the history. And then he is asking people, what do you think, what kind of art style Gorbachev, not art style, but style of leadership and artistic style was Gorbachev, was Tito, was Margaret Thatcher. And then they talk about that. And then they have to stand up one by one and talking about their own leadership styles through the artistic style. And that is why everything around is done. Because you cannot come in the classroom and say, you are telling something about yourself. You have to prepare the situation, and then they are talking. What did you want to say?
Danica, that's a great story. It's just I don't quite understand. I have a direct relationship with art. How does it correlate with business? Because we're talking about business education, aren't we? You're talking about the development of creativity, but they said, are there any outcomes that you can demonstrate, that you can measure? How does it affect business? Do you have any unbiased data?
Same way, what is business, you know, and what is leadership education? Leadership education is, you can see, of course, immediately that people are becoming better people, because you cannot be a good leader if you are not a good human being, you know? People are starting to feel more, because art is helping you to feel more, and to see more, and to hear more. Art is putting you in touch with creative yourself. So I can give you plenty of examples, but it's not no time here, how you can see. You can't see immediately. Some things you can see immediately. But these guys are in 5 years, in 10 years becoming better leader. I have 85 in the meantime, 1,000 people around the world who graduated in our school, 85,000. From these 85,000, 5,000 of them had art and leadership in longer programs. And I can tell you, I don't have one single person who was in the prison ever. Do you understand? This is one of the effects. The other one is that the students are coming back and, you know, and they are interested they are good leaders. They are running their companies. I'm proud of them. They are for philanthropy, you know, working, etc., etc. They are coming back to school and they say, we would like to receive the next generation with something, with art, with this and that, and they are preparing the place, and they are all busy leaders. So you can see on many, many ways, but long term, this is long term effect, is not tomorrow, you know. You are getting, you know, possibility later.
Very good. Thank you very much, Danica. Just on this side of the room, are you getting quite hot, or is the temperature all right? I can't tell from. Is it? Do you want some more air conditioning? Yes? Yeah? Could someone open the second window, please? Thank you very much.
You are far enough from the air, the cold air, you know? That's why. Yeah, Jonas wants to have a short question for short answer.
Okay, Jonas, yeah?
Perfect. Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Jonas Hadler with the United Nations Prime. One comment and one question to Danica, but also to Boris. So, first comment, I think it does work. We had music in our opening session of the Prime Forum in 2013 at Danica's school, together with a leading business school, McGill from Canada. Yeah. I think it worked quite well to see music and leadership training or leadership education. One question to Danica and to Boris, because I think we haven't heard much about the overarching topic, values and virtues, here at the session. I think it's quite telling that this forum here is termed the Davos of Russia. Next week we will have the World Economic Forum in Davos, which talks about a common future in a fractured world. I wanted to ask both of you what you take as the basic values and virtues we can maybe see here in the Russian economy that can help Russian business leaders and students think about what type of company leadership do you want to see. And you talked about ethical leadership, you talked about responsible leadership, but maybe to bring it back to a global discussion, what values and virtues would you like to see companies in Russia and CEE take forward to address the question of a fractured world that we have in front of us?
If you allow, because I give more time to you.
Could I just say that Danica can pick that up in the next session at 3:30. But while we've got Boris here, it would be great for your view. Boris.
I'll try to be very brief. You mentioned yourself, it's a fractured world.
Somehow. And there are definitely values and virtues in this world that bring us together. We're all people. We're not so much different from we have been 6,000 years ago when we first emerged as a state, as an example, on this earth. So my mind that we have to find these things that bring us together. And we have differences. There are intrinsic differences. We were born different, of course. But on the other hand, we were born as belonging to the mankind, we want it or not. And these are the things that matter to all of us. And Davos is about probably to talk about global things. We are here to talk about Russian scale of things. And I'm representing international business. I'm not a big expert in Russian business as such. And I know it differs very much from the values and the management styles and positioning and people relationship also. They differ very much. So I would not be bold enough to answer for the total of Russia. I will talk about more international business. Sorry about that, if I haven't answered the question.
I would add, Russia needs more of that. This is my suggestion. I mean, more development in this sense, more schools about that, more talking about that, everything more, like everybody in the world. But Russia is too technically oriented education, etc., I think you need more.
All right, thank you. I'm mindful we've still got two key speakers to go, and I want to give them their time. So now, moving to the very end on the far left, I'm delighted to welcome Frank Bostyn, who's had a very distinguished career, most recently as Dean and Director General of NEOMA in France. I go over to you.
Yeah, actually, I'm not with NEOMA Business School anymore, so I have been 5 years the dean there, competing with SKEMA at the national market. I'm now just moved to the Emirates, where I'm dean of the College of Business and Economics at United Arab Emirates University. So, yeah, it's a bit warmer over there. Before that, I was strategic advisor to the Minister of Science and Innovation in Belgium. And before that, in fact, I was in the shoes of Paul. I was the dean at the Antwerp Management School. So I studied philosophy, economics, and management, and part of my doctoral research was exactly on Adam Smith, and more particularly on the relation between the theory-moral sentiments and the wealth of nations. So it's a very interesting topic indeed. Of course, we will focus on other things here. And I think in the debate how to breed business leaders in today's world, I think you have to make a difference between two issues, main issues. That's one is how to do it, and the second is what you want to do, what the focus is. I will not develop on how to do it, but it has to do with how do you motivate youngsters to learn to study, because that is changing fundamentally as well. And that is having an impact on how you deal with it in the context of a business school. However, if we concentrate on what are the needs, what kind of competences are you looking for, what should be the focus of your education, well, just look at titles of degrees. So MBA, Business Administration. Then you had a Master of Management. Now we are talking of leadership. This is already telling something. There is clearly a shift of already. But the main point now is that we are living in a world, an environment, societies, economies that are changing very rapidly and permanently. And that will not change. We will not go to, let's say, a more stable environment like we have known in the 70s, 80s in terms of big corporations and so on. So there is innovation, there's technological innovation. Don't forget, because here we are talking about the digital age, but the fourth industrial revolution and the impact that brings that will even go beyond that. There is also globalization with all its aspects. So if you look at that, I think the needs in terms of what a leader is or a manager is are quite different than before. Of course, there must be a kind of proficiency with the technological side, but that is not the main point. I share the opinion of that has already been stressed here, that it is more about personality, because the more the environment is hectic and changing, the more people will rely on who they are, on their personality and on their character. So that means that if you really want to have business leaders, they must be strong personalities. And you can discuss the ethical judgment side and whatever. But basically, resilience is very important. It has been stressed also, of course, the notion of adaptability, of agility. It's of course, very important. Transformational leadership that has been mentioned. But these are all things you don't recognize in a title, business administration, if I just provoke a bit. I mean, of course, there is still administration and let's say, management to do. But an important element as well is if you compare management education, let's say, of the 70s with now, is that the difference between operational and general strategic management has disappeared. I mean, a career, especially in career, you were starting with operational responsibilities. Nowadays, you immediately have to put it in perspective of a strategy or general management. And it's even going further than that because organizations are breaking down. And that means that if you want to be successful in your ventures, in your entrepreneurship and in your business, you must also be able to cooperate with experts outside of your organization. And that changes completely because you have no authority over them. Seducing people will become very important. And I think one of the models of how to manage that can be very inspirational is, of course, the arts. It is also academia. I mean, they are saying if you say, what is the dean's job? Well, they all say it's impossible because professors, they are individualistic and experts, and they are going in all kinds of directions. They say it's herding cats. So in hospitals, main things. So if you are now thinking that an ever-changing environment where businesses come and go, where innovation is the new normal, where capturing value, and that's also something you must be skillful in, is very tricky because you have to work with outside partners. They can capture the value of your new idea and so on. So you have not only be able to network, to seduce, but you have indeed also be able to herd cats and to work with experts. We are more and more going to a model economy based on experts and with individual mindsets, and bringing them together in a certain of business venture, in a terms of strategy, is a complete other challenge than administering a business or something like that. Now, I want to add another element, a bit provocative. When I was chief advisor, strategic advisor to the Minister of Science and Innovation, I have met a lot of business people coming to complain that higher education was not attuned with the needs and so on. In part, they were right, but their demands were not correct. They were looking to fill in immediate positions to solve immediate needs. Sorry, that is important, of course. We're talking about employability and serving the business community, but we have a moral obligation over to our students. We are not educating, and definitely not training, but we are not educating robots who become obsolete after a while because things are changing so rapidly. So I think the orientation of business school must not only be employability, but sustained employability. And that brings me back to character, to personality, to what they call in German Bildung. The person must be by strong resilience and that kind of thing. Now, that's another kind of story of introducing people in marketing 101, finance 101, and so on. This remains important, but it is not a success factor anymore. In terms of structuring your education, of course, you have to take into account how you can do that and how you can motivate people. It's a very challenging thing. And it has been mentioned also by Patrice, disruptive change in the environment of higher education, but can be an opportunity. MOOCs are not threatening us. MOOCs are like textbooks. It's not because suddenly there were textbooks that education disappeared. I mean, what is very important in reflecting on that is that these elements are more content. Content and information and knowledge. It's not education. That's a huge difference. All that you can push out of the classroom and of the interaction frees up time, is better because it frees up time to concentrate on the much more complicated issue of strengthening those competences like transformational leadership, agility, resilience, personal strength, because we have to know it, and you know all the book of The Shift of Linda Grattan from London Business School. We will have multiple careers, but also depressing times. So if you are closed in your business and so on as a technical expert, you are at risk as a human being because you might at a certain moment become obsolete and you cannot orient. So the notion of lifelong learning becomes something of personal building. And I guess Business schools have huge challenges there, like all kind of higher education. In the debates we have, for instance, in the context also of ASCSB, the reflections are really enriching. And I see there are a lot of schools that are taking good initiatives. But let's be honest, we are all exploring, trying to find answers. Because the times are changing, as one Nobel Prize winner for literature once said. So, and we have to live up to that. We don't have conclusive answers, and we will never have. And luckily, because that's also part of management. Suppose that you could solve all problems just like that, like mechanical problems, you would not need managers. And that would be a very bad message, I guess, for deans of business schools, because we could then simply withdraw from our business and close it. So that's my introductory point.
Thank you very much. Any questions before our final speaker? No? All right then. Well, I move from the far left to the far right, and thank you for your patience, Andrei. Delighted to welcome Andrei Zhiganov, the president of the Moscow School of Management at Skolkovo, one of, as I'm sure you know, the top private schools in Russia.
Thank you, Andrea. I will follow the example of Boris and will switch into Russian. It's a matter of courtesy of the 95% of auditorium. Please take your headphones. And I would like to be short and will mention just 3 theses. Добрый день.
Hi. I'll try to be very brief, and I will only mention 3 points. Point 1, I believe that today, actually throughout both sessions, the morning one and the one after breakfast, so we were talking about something very different from what we have on the sheet, how to prepare, how to train business leaders in digital economy. I think none of the speakers, whether they wanted or not, called or mentioned specific traits of leaders in digital economy. We were more talking about business leaders in a situation where the world is defined by the concept of VUCA, uncertainty, variability, complexity. And I believe that apart from technical competencies, there are no special traits or qualities that leaders should possess specifically for digital economy. As I promised, I will be a little provocative in my statements. It seems obvious to me from the 10 interventions over these 2 sessions that this conclusion is quite obvious. We're talking about modern leaders, but we are not talking about the specificity of competencies in the digital economy. The second point. If we approach rigorously to the definition of digital economy, then we can pay attention to the fact that in literature they're trying to make a distinction between the concept of ICT and digital economy as a new phase in the development of this trend. If we want to discuss it in any serious way, I think we should mention these 4 factors that distinguish digital economy from information-based economy. That is the economy that relies on the gadgets that every one of us carries in their pockets or purses. Firstly, the first thing is big data. And now they even talk about the transformation of big data into artificial intelligence. What makes digital economy different from, distinct from information-based economy? It's the use of big data. The second thing is mobility. It's not just about having the information on a computer, but it's about the information accessible to us via a mobile device that's always with us on the palm of our hand. The third factor is social social. Another important trait of digital economy is prompt dissemination of information across huge numbers of people. And the fourth factor, which makes the digital economy different from information-based economy, is the cloud aspect. It's that the economy is cloud-based. It is perhaps homework for the future for us. If we want to talk about these things, we need to look at what business schools in general, business schools in particular, are offering to respond to these four key distinctive features of digital economy. And the last point that I'd like to make is not really about digital economy. It's about training business leaders in the VUCA world era, the world that changes very fast and it's difficult to predict. And again, it's not my invention, but I think it's quite opportune in this context. It's the redefinition of the CEO function. There are several new ways to expand this acronym. I'd just like to name two, which I believe are important, especially as applied to the digital economy phase. The first thing is to translate CEO as Chief Experiment Officer, a person that's prepared to make experiments, and that's an important trait that distinguishes a new wave leader. Although I think that we could find such leaders even in the 19th century. Not to mention the 20th century, but nevertheless, it's turning from a privilege to a must-have. So the person needs to create sandboxes in their companies where they will trial new technologies and, depending on the outcomes, translate them to the core business. And another reading, new reading of CEO is Chief Energy Officer. But I'm not talking about, electrical power, Mikhail. I'm talking about a person who is motivating the company and is responsible for the total energy level within the company. So turning people who are putting bricks or receiving salary, turning them into people who are building a church, a cathedral. And this is a big difference, even though physically it's about the same people. The attitude changes, and it will change just because this person will have charged them with positive energy, with emotion, by drawing a great purpose for them. Thank you.
Timing. We've technically got 3 or 4 minutes left. If anyone would like to ask any of our panel any further questions. No? All right. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you for your questions, your patience. And obviously, two thank yous. Thank you to all our panel members for giving their time and thoughts today. And just finally, to thank a couple of people who rarely get a mention at events like this, and in my view, always should. It's a very difficult and demanding task, and it's that of our translators. So from all of us, thank you for the excellent work you've done. Hopefully see you here for the session on responsible management at 3:30.